Hey, it's Jeff W. Welsh. Welcome to the Hardcore Happiness Podcast, where we talk about the art and science of how to create your best life. Expect to discuss mindset and purpose, the positive and the profound, and anything else that contributes to the healthiest, happiest, most successful life you can imagine. This is your sanctuary against fear-mongering and propaganda, the place to focus on a life of well-being and satisfaction and transform your world. I'm Jeff W. Welsh, and this is Hardcore Happiness. Sometimes we look at these topics in a wide general sense, kind of a 30,000-foot overview, and sometimes we drill down a little bit and do a deep dive. Today is going to be one of those deep dives. I want to talk to you about gratitude. Gratitude is a major part of a successful mindset. There's many parts to mindset, but it kind of all starts with gratitude. You've got to get to gratitude, or you won't stick with your chosen purpose when things get hard. One of the major concepts of the Hardcore Happiness Project is this: gratitude defeats despair. Some people come to me with the belief that they don't have very much to be grateful for. They kind of Eeyore about the whole thing, and their take on it is, well, things aren't really that great, and I don't have everything I want, and, things could be better, and this podcast is for you if you're one of those people. And if you're not one of those people, I'd like to take a second and remind you all of how much you really have to be grateful about. You can tell this has been on my mind for a while. By the way, this title might lead you to believe that this is a religious podcast in some way. While this topic can certainly be applied to religion, it actually focuses on energy and intent, what some people might call spirituality. So let's get into it. Grace is a gift, is something of great value bestowed upon you when you didn't necessarily work for it and maybe don't even deserve it. Gratitude is using our will to become mindful of the gifts we have received. Let's talk about some of the traditionally understood gifts of grace, how through the ages people have looked at grace. What is it? First, there's grace as divine, unmerited forgiveness, meaning that you didn't earn it. Christians believe that Jesus Christ sacrificed himself so that his followers could be absolved from sin. They believe that his act saves them from eternal death, and as such is the ultimate gift of grace. In Christianity, this includes the concept of justification by faith. In Islam, they call that Rahmah, which is divine mercy. It allows for forgiveness despite flaws. In Judaism, chesed, loving kindness, is a divine willingness to forgive and restore. Grace as the gift of a divine indwelling spirit exists as well. In Christianity, the Holy Spirit is given freely as a comforter, teacher, and guide, according to the Bible. In Jewish mysticism, Shekinah is the divine feminine presence. In Hinduism, Atman, the true self, is seen as divinely gifted and eternal. All of these things come not because you deserve it, not because you requested it, but as a gift. That's one of the main points about grace, is there's something that has been gifted to you. Grace is also seen as unbidden insight or revelation, awakening. Sometimes grace appears in moments of sudden clarity or transformation. St. Augustine's Confessions talk about a sudden shift from vice to virtue as grace-filled. The Buddha's awakening under the Bodhi tree is seen in some Buddhist traditions as the fruit of accumulated merit, but also as a spontaneous moment of realization, a grace of readiness. Stay with me here. I promise this is not a mini course in world religions. I'm setting the stage to show you something secular and profound, something you can and should use in your everyday life, in your own quest for hardcore happiness. As we move away from doctrinal to practical concerns, here's some other examples. Grace is seen as love without condition or expectation. Unconditional love is called agape in the Greek. It means selfless love. That's a concept that comes from Christian theology. Karuna is Sanskrit, and it talks about compassion in Buddhism, which is seen as a natural outpouring of enlightenment. Again, gifted, not requested, not earned. Chesed in Hebrew is a steadfast, conventional love, even when undeserved. Grace as faith itself is another way to look at it. For many, just the ability to believe or trust is a gift of grace. In this view, human striving alone is insufficient. Openness to grace is required. But that's it. Again, it's not anything that you deserve. You just have to be willing to receive it in that particular view. There's other themes that talk about grace in your everyday, daily actions. Physical, emotional, and spiritual healing are sometimes seen as gifts from the divine. The Bible and every other culture talks about miracles of healing in their scripture and in their cultural stories and their history. The blind can see and lepers have been cleansed, and these kinds of things happen as symbols of a deeper spiritual restoration, not necessarily religious. In many Eastern traditions, grace interrupts the karmic cycle. Karma, of course, is the system where what you do comes back to you. Ramanuja's theology in Hinduism sees liberation, what they call moksha, as ultimately dependent on divine grace. It's something that comes with what they call prapatti, or surrender. In Christian mysticism, union with the divine is seen as the culmination of grace-filled purification. Let's talk about the concept of grace as you can see it demonstrated in daily life. A lot of people think that grace manifests as second chances, as the possibility of renewal. Broken lives can be mended and new paths can be forged. It's kind of the prodigal son story. The idea there is failure is not final. The second chance idea is that even if you screw everything up, sometimes grace can be bestowed upon you in the form of you trying again. Frequently, that's the case. In psychological terms, grace is that which allows reintegration after shame. Think about that for a second. It's kind of a second or third or more chance in a way as well. It gives you the permission to go forward after you've made a grave error, which we've all made, right? Grace isn't just forgiveness, but also transformation. The spiritual journey itself is often seen as a grace-filled unfolding, as opposed to something that you earned by your effort. In Catholic theology, this is codified as grace leading to holiness over time. Finally, let's look at the role of grace as it applies to one of the core principles of the Hardcore Happiness Project. That is grace as purpose. That might be a bit confusing because we talk about purpose as something that you choose and then follow as a long-term life goal. But at the very end of that, there might be a sudden clarity of purpose or direction or meaning or calling in your life. This is the kind of revelation that we see in the stories of the prophets and saints and mystics across many traditions and times. In many people's lives, discovering their purpose ends with an act of grace, not pure effort. There is a lot of research and preparation that goes into your choice of life purpose. When you define a meaning for your life, it should include three main characteristics. First, it should be something about which you are passionate enough to actually sustain your pursuit. If you're not really passionate about it, you're probably not going to stick with it. And the whole point of hardcore happiness and a purpose within that is to be a life goal that sustains you for a long period of time. Second, it should be something that's within the possibility of physical reality. We're not just talking about thoughts and words here, we're talking about actual actions. This is something practical. And thirdly, it should be something that includes directly or as a byproduct of what you do, a benefit to others. Here's a personal example from me. My primary purpose here is to help you wrestle with these concepts as they exist in your real, everyday life. The benefit to you is freedom from other people telling you what and how to be, and to get sustainable joy, hardcore happiness as we call it, in your life as you pursue your own physical, psychological, and even financial goals. If you're happy and committed, you're far more likely to make that 7 or 8 figure income and take care of yourself in such a way that you'll be around long enough to enjoy it. But after all that thinking and writing and decision making and planning, many times there comes a moment when your purpose suddenly becomes clear to you. I'm sure part of it has to do with the cognition. You put in all these thoughts, and it's like the pieces of a jigsaw puzzle. You align this one and that one, and then they come together and they show you the larger whole. But sometimes that happens with such force that it seems almost strange that it came from your muse. A lot of people would see that as grace. It's as if the perfect meaning for your life hits all at once. It just comes to you. A lot of people might experience that in a slightly different way, where they are pretty sure it's the right thing, the right purpose that they've been thinking about. But the gift of grace comes as validation, where suddenly you're sure this is really what I need to do right now. This is why people talk about a calling. I've been called to do such and such. Well, how do you know that? I guess sometimes that comes from an authority figure who says you're called to do that. But the best way to do that is for you to suddenly realize, wow, this hits right. This is what I'm supposed to do right now. This is the right direction for my purpose, at least at this time. And a lot of people would consider that revelation to be a gift of grace. But I think that the greatest gift of all comes before all of those. Is something that happens long before you can experience any of the other forms of grace that we've discussed so far. Let me try to explain what I mean by that. Take the gift of salvation. A lot of people believe in that. Even if you don't, it'll still give you the example here. For the gift of salvation to manifest, there has to be something to be saved. For that reason, I think maybe the greatest gift, the ultimate act of grace, is the fact that you exist at all, and even then possess a consciousness sufficient to ponder your existence. The fact that you're here and aware of the fact that you're here has to come before anything else can happen, any transformation, any salvation, anything else that can happen that we've talked about as manifestations of the gift of grace, things for which you can be grateful, which is where we're headed with all this. You've got to exist first. Now, stay with me for a second, because we're going to take a radical shift from religious and spiritual and metaphysical to mathematical and scientific. I have a question for you. Of all of the possible combinations of human DNA, which is what makes you a person, it's what makes you at all, what percentage has actually been realized as a living person? Here's what I mean by that. All the people who are anatomically intact, I should say, throughout history have had DNA. They came from DNA, and they transmit DNA to the people downline from them. DNA is a huge molecule. Of all of the kids that could have come from all of that DNA, how many were actually born to go ahead and perpetuate the species themselves? Here's how it works mathematically, scientifically. Each couple, human couple we're talking about obviously, has between 20 and 25,000 genes, with over 8 million possible combinations of chromosomes per parent. When you combine the two parents, the number of unique potential zygotes, a zygote is a fertilized egg, human in this case, that could become a person is about 70 trillion. That's 8.4 million from mom times 8.4 million from dad. And that's not even counting mutations and epigenetic variations, recombination events, environmental factors that influence gene expression, which is kind of epigenetics. So a single couple could potentially produce tens of trillions of genetically distinct children. Now think about history. The number of people who estimated who've ever lived is about 117 billion from the first person through today. So let's give this whole calculation some leeway here. Let's say that 50% were reproductively active adults. Say that half of them chose to reproduce or could reproduce. That gives us about 58 billion possible males and about 58 billion possible females at different times throughout all of human history. But not all those people were alive or fertile at the same time, and historical population sizes were much smaller. So realistically, the amount of viable pairings, the amount of people who could have made babies, is actually far lower than the theoretical guess. So if we put that together, we figure out that A, there's been about 117 billion individual humans, each with a unique genome, not counting identical twins and clones, in case you were wondering. So even being generous, let's say there's 100 billion unique humans. Compared to the near infinite potential of more than 70 trillion possibilities per couple. And then across millions of couples, the number of possible DNA combinations reaches beyond the quintillions. If your head is spinning from all this math and science, here's what I'm trying to say. Of all the people who could have existed, the number who have been born is less than 1/septillionth. That's 0.024 times and then a 1%. That's 1 times 10 to the minus 24th if you are into scientific notation. What all that means, it's so unlikely that it's practically cosmic dust. So your existence, your exact DNA, your personality, consciousness, experience, the stuff that makes you you, is so mathematically, statistically unlikely to have ever happened that you have to look at it like a miracle wrapped in probability. There's a quote that I've heard a million times. It's been attributed to a guy named Fred Hoyle. I haven't been able to figure out if that's actually who said it, but we're gonna give Fred credit here anyway. He said, "The chance that higher life forms might have emerged by chance is comparable to the chance that a tornado going through a junkyard accidentally assembled a Boeing 747. So what does this mean for you? It means that you are unrepeatable, non-random, although you were born through randomness and the combination of genes. You are a singular event in the history of the cosmos. No one like you has ever come before, and mathematically speaking, no one like you will ever come again. You are proof that possibility doesn't guarantee inevitability." The point is this: before you can experience forgiveness or second chances or freedom from samsara, there has to be a you in the first place. And there's no realistic, mathematical, biological reason that you should ever exist. But here you are. Is that the ultimate form of grace? You decide. Most importantly, as it relates to your daily practice of gratitude, your real life, not pie in the sky philosophy, these gifts of grace that we're talking about are not solely relegated to the sphere of ineffable cosmic events. All the types of grace we have discussed, from forgiveness to second chances, through the fact that you even exist, you didn't ask for those, you didn't work for those. Those things just kind of happened. And so we're covering all that by calling it grace at this point. And the purpose of all this discussion about all this math and science and philosophy and spirituality about grace is to make clear that you have plenty to be grateful for. In fact, let's look at just some normal things that happen that aren't major cosmological events in your life. It becomes really important to your mindset, to your concentration, that you can see all these mundane miracles that exist in your life right now. There's so many examples. If you just stop right now and look around you, think about who you are and what's going on just in your everyday existence. Let me list a few for you. You exist. You can think. You probably have the ability to see or hear, or both, this podcast. You have something to eat and something to drink. You probably have somebody who cares about you. You probably have some kind of shelter and clothes to wear. And that just covers the lowest level of Maslow's hierarchy. If you're familiar with Maslow, he said, first of all, there's survival needs, and then you work your way up to the point where you actually become self-actualized. So we've just covered the basic survival stuff. That alone is a lot to be grateful for when you think about it. So look around and make up your own list. What else makes up your daily life? Right now, where you're sitting or driving or looking or listening to this, if you're driving, you better only be listening to this. Do you have parents, children, other relatives, grandparents, aunts, uncles, cousins, step whatevers? Do you have friends or romantic partners? Maybe you're grateful for the people sitting next to you right now in your car or the bus or a coffee shop or your church or your yoga class. Maybe you're happy that you have a car or the bus system or your bicycle or the fact that you can walk. How about the places that you're able to visit, whether it's the next town or the next state or the next country or another continent? Here's some things that we take for granted that you probably want to include in your practice of gratefulness. How about music, books, movies? Yeah, including Netflix and YouTube and Hulu and whatever. How about mountains and rivers and oceans and beaches and deserts and forests? Highways and country roads and towns and farms and cities, conversations and hugs, sex and long drives and fireplace chats. Make your own list. What makes you happy? What do you collect? What have you gotten that you always wanted? How about education and experiences? How about pets? We certainly don't deserve dogs. That has to be a gift of grace. How about the earth itself? How about the things that happen on the earth? Sunrises and sunsets and eclipses and seasons. And you get the idea. We become so habituated to these things. We become so familiar with them that we don't see them anymore. Instead of talking in the abstract, let me give you a personal example for me. I'll tell you what, I'm going to raise a finger every time I come to something for which I'm grateful. You keep count, okay? This is just over the last couple of days. There's one that I am here, spent the last few days, there's one that I even had a last few days to spend in San Diego. That's a blessing in itself. Are you counting? I think we're up to 3 or 4 here. I drove my car to San Diego to see my son because he did his solo flight as he goes through school to become a professional pilot. All of these are things I can be grateful for. In fact, I wrote about this in my blog this week, which you can read on my website. I'm thankful I have a website, which is jeffwwelsh.com, by the way, or my Substack or my Medium accounts, which I'm also grateful for, all of which are parts of this Hardcore Happiness Project, which is my chosen, I get to choose, purpose. I have a purpose. While I was in San Diego, I saw many of my friends and my acquaintances, and I made a few new ones. I had my favorite breakfast at my favorite coffee shop before I went to Balboa Park, and later had dinner with my son. Are you still counting? Do I need to go on? How many did you get so far? That covers about 2 days, and that's just the really fun, cool stuff. That's not just the mundane stuff we talked about. Listen to me right now. Pause this podcast. Okay, if you're driving, do it later when you won't become a menace on the highway. And make a list of at least 20 things you are grateful for. You just heard a giant list from huge cosmological experiences from God to driving around San Diego and everything in between. So 20 should be easy. Then come back. I'll be right here. I'm waiting. Welcome back. Did you do it? If not, do it now. I'm watching you. Now look at your list. Now look at me. Now look back at your list and tell me again, do you really believe that you have nothing for which to be thankful? Yeah, I didn't think so. Your list, if you did it, and I certainly hope you did, is comprised of 20 things. 20 out of how many? You should be able to write 1,000 things that you are thankful for, many of them gifted to you as grace. From divine gifts to your dog or a sunset or watching the sunset with your dog, which is even better, your life is literally the product of and swimming in grace, however you define it. That gives you infinite reasons to count and write in your daily journitation. If you don't know what journitation is, be sure to look it up in my blog called Journitation. It's on my website. Reasons to count your blessings and to start your day every day with a mindset of gratitude. Remember this, when you're in pursuit of your purpose, your hardcore happiness, and the going gets tough, the tough get grateful. Gratitude defeats despair. The Hardcore Happiness podcast is live every Friday in video form on YouTube and in audio form wherever you listen to your podcasts. Visit the podcast page at jeffwwelsh.studio where you can see past episodes and listen to the latest one. Be sure to subscribe so you never miss an episode. Check out the links page at my website, jeffwwelsh.com, to contact me, or if you're interested in having me speak to your organization. You can subscribe to my work on the Hardcore Happiness blog page and the Jeff W. Welsh Substack or Medium accounts, and you can follow my accounts on Instagram and X. I really would love it if you followed me on Instagram. It's where I do most of my daily posts. To support this community, you can donate through my Patreon account. Thanks again for watching. I'm Dr. Jeff W. Welsh.